시작해 보도록 하겠습니다. 오늘 아침 10시에 시작하는 첫 번째 세션은 아마 관심 많으실 텐데 이머시브 테크를 활용해서 어떻게 공연 예술을 변화시켰는지에 대한 경험들 좀 나눠보려고 합니다. 저희가 올해 비욘드 리얼리티 섹션에 이제 선정한 작품 중에 공연과 연관된 콘텐츠가 4개가 있습니다. 어떻게 이제 제작을 했는지 또 과정에서 어떤 어려움들이 있었는지 이런 이야기를 좀 나누다 보면 앞으로 우리가 이제 새로운 형태의 콘텐츠를 창작할 때 여러 가지 도움이 많이 되지 않을까 해서 이제 세션을 마련해 봤고요. 아마 다른 어느 곳에 가서도 이 그 케이스 스터디를 듣기는 좀 어려우실 것 같아서 아마 좋은 기회가 되지 않을까 싶습니다. 오늘 그 연사로 5분을 모셨습니다. 이렇게 소개해 드리면 이제 저랑 제일 가까운 곳에 계신 분은 파인드 윌리의 이제 영어 버전 연출자이신 휘튼 프랭크 님이시고요. 네, 그 옆에는 여러 가지 이제 테크적인 면에서 디렉션을 맡아주신 스크리밍 컬러신데요. 보통 영화에서는 감독과 어떤 기술을 좀 분리해서 많이 생각을 하지만 이쪽 분야의 미디어는 사실 거의 되게 밀접하게 관련이 있기 때문에 거의 연출자와 같다고 생각을 하시면 될 것 같습니다. 그리고 그 옆에는 파인드 윌리의 원작 버전이죠. 한국 버전 연출하신 현미나 감독님 오셨고요. 그 다음에 그 옆에는 타이프맨이라고 작년에 베니스 영화제에서 호평을 받았던 타이프맨의 프로듀서인 카츠토시 마치바 님께서 오셨습니다. 그리고 아마 여기에 온 작품만 보시면 이게 영화구나 라고 생각하실 수 있는데요. 2층에는 All That Remains 연출하신 크레이그 퀸테로 감독님이신데 원작은 공연입니다. 한 사람씩 들어가서 실제 배우와 소통하는 이머시브 시어터가 원작이고요. 그 원작을 바탕으로 만든 작품이라서 그 과정도 아마 흥미롭게 이야기를 들을 수 있지 않을까 싶습니다.
안녕하세요. 전 VR사업팀 박보람이라고 합니다. 일단 저희 이번 토크에는 영어로 진행을 하려고 하거든요. Hi everyone, I'm Boram Park, a VR team lead and moderator for this talk today. And performance is mid-art. And thanks for coming. Let's take some time to talk about each of the works and the technology that goes into creating immersive content from performance. And we also discuss about the process of immersive storytelling as well. Yeah. So we will start with the Whitten first. Yeah.
Hello. Oh, okay. 안녕하세요, Whitten입니다. I try. So hi, I am a performer, producer, and director from Los Angeles, and I work primarily with Ferryman Collective, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And I've been so lucky to work, well, Ferryman has been so lucky to work in collaboration with WiiILii a few times now, most recently with bringing Find WiiILii, translating it into English and bringing it to South by Southwest this year. But I want to talk a little bit about how we found each other and why that all came to be. So myself and Deirdre Lyons in 2019 were hired by a company called Tender Claws to participate in their video game, The Under Presents, which wanted to do a promotional event with having live actors play NPCs in their game. And it was only supposed to be a couple of months, but then of course COVID happened. And what was supposed to be a couple of months turned into a several-year gig. So along with doing the live actor NPCs, we also did a production of The Tempest in VR. I don't know, did anyone come and see The Tempest in The Under Presents? Anybody? Oh, yay! 1, 2, thank you. It was a really unique experience with one actor sort of leading the audience members through their own interpretation of Shakespeare's The Tempest. So then after that, Deirdre and a few fans of The Under Presents came together to create the idea of a theater production company that was primarily about creating performance in virtual reality, live performance in virtual reality, and that was how Ferryman Collective was born. We did 2 shows, Para and Krampusnacht, both of which were proof of concept shows that I performed in, and then we approached the creator of the in real life immersive theater show Welcome to Respite, Lindsay Scoggin, about bringing her show into VR because we thought it was the perfect piece of art that would work in the virtual space. And it did. It worked wonderfully. We got quite a few awards, especially for being such a small, underfunded company. And then, at the end of our festival run, after a few years, we were approached by this lovely Korean company, Gyoe, who came to us, and they said that they wanted to license Welcome to Respite and bring it to the Asian markets. So we worked with them on translating it into Korean and updating a few things. For example, instead of having the fun food that you get to make with your mom, mac and cheese, I believe it was now curry, like a morning curry thing, which was really fun. So it was fun to sort of learn more culturally about each other and to share that incredible collab. And I know that Welcome to Respite, who here has seen Welcome to Respite in the English or Korean version? Yes? Oh, amazing. Yay. Thank you, Jay. Jay's like, I have. So that was our first collaboration together. And then, of course, Ferryman did Gumball Dreams. So here you see our actor taking the audience members through the rainbow room and talking about the nature of memory and the parts of us. And there's our wonderful actor playing Onyx right there. So Gumball Dreams, of course, was inspired by the wonderful Color sitting here to my left, and his world, Gumball Lounge. And it is kind of a psychedelic rainbow journey of transformation. It's a really beautiful piece about the nature of life and the soul and also death. And it all comes together in this beautiful culmination of private moments between the actor and the audience, as well as shared moments of experience between the audience members. And then at the very end, all of them together sharing a wonderful journey to the finish of the show. So, and then earlier this year, well, probably at the end of last year, after Gumball Dreams and its success, Gyoe came to us again asking if we would help them take one of their shows, Find WiiILii, and bring it to the US at South by for American audiences, so translating it into English and doing what we do with shows and making them very fun and things like that. And so we got to do the reverse of what we'd done previously with Welcome to Respite. So it was really incredible working with the whole team at Gyoe, with Jay and Mina and Renee and everybody, to take the show and translate it into English, but also do a little bit more work with the performance aspect of it, which is where I come in and how I feel about working in VR as a director. My background is theater. I went to undergrad at Carnegie Mellon University and then graduate school at LAMDA, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts in London. So all of my background is in that. And then once I moved to LA, my work was primarily in immersive theater. And so as a director, I find that VR specifically is the perfect medium for immersive theater, right? Because you basically take the best elements of video games, theater, and film, and you're able to combine them. You're able to take things like a walk through outer space with your parents, where they're just describing it, but now you can really be in outer space. Suddenly it comes to life around you. This way you can absolutely, truly immerse people in the world, even taking something as basic as an avatar and using it for storytelling. In Welcome to Respite, in the real life version, you tell people that they're a child, right? But you can't make them a child. You can't physically make them smaller. But in VR, we can, right? Or in a real life production of Gumball Dreams, we could tell people they were aliens, but we can't make them aliens. But we can in VR. We can give them fantastical avatars and we can journey them through this rainbow world in a set that would take probably millions of dollars to build in real life. And we can do it in VR chat for very little, which is one of the benefits, I think, as a creator of working in VR, is that every time we want to remount a show or bring it back to life, we don't need to rent the space or rebuild the set. We can just launch the world again, and there it all is, right? With minimal updates and maintenance. But that is part of what makes, for me, working in VR so spectacular. It starts to allow more and more people to work in the creative arts. It doesn't just become the province of Broadway, right? It's now not just for the people that can afford it, that can afford several $100 ticket to the theater or to the opera or to the ballet. Suddenly, we can perform and create pieces for people all over the world. And as an actor, I think that's incredibly fabulous because you can perform from your home for people all over the world. And at any time, whatever works for you, we can schedule you for performances based around your schedule. So again, it starts to equalize things. It starts to make things much more easily accessible. And I believe that VR translates across cultures and languages in a way that other performance mediums don't always. Because you're being immersed in the world. Especially with Gumball Dreams, I think we were really able to touch people in a way that surpassed language. You can feel the emotion of someone just looking at you or holding your hand or giving you a hug in virtual reality, just as real as if we were doing it now here. It feels just as vibrant and just as vital as it does in real life. And I think that's the real gift of virtual reality. So for me as a director, I like to think about it not just as theater in the round, but as theater in 360, right? I can have an actor up here. I can have them anywhere. The voice and the sound can come really from anywhere in the world and engage the audience in that way, as opposed to just working with a proscenium piece, like in traditional theater, or even in theater in the round. This brings theater to a whole new level, which is really exciting as a director, but I think it's important to keep in mind when you direct in VR that that is the case, right? You cannot think about it just like a traditional theater show. You have to start thinking about, how do I use the virtual space? What can I do that's different? Otherwise, why are you bringing it into VR, right? Why not just do a traditional theater show or do a film? There has to be a reason. There has to be something that you are doing that utilizes this space. Maybe it's purely for the ability to bring people into different spaces, right? I'm creating a project where we're going to start in a house and then I'm going to have Egypt form around you. We'll have sounds. We'll have the desert waves taking over the space. I can't do that in real life. I can only do that in something like VR. If you are thinking about creating a performance or working in that way, remember that this medium has its own special way of being, and everything that you do in there should utilize that, right? And for me, that's the most important. One thing that I would like to do, I guess, Jay asked me about my vision. So my vision is being able to create the virtual version of a theater lab space. So taking the elements of VR that would be free for people to use, where we could create theatrical pieces and actors and the tech side of things could work together to be like, okay, what are the elements that we need for each show? A customizable palette of options and ways to move around your space, lighting, filming, sound, and all of this would be available to you. So you could just come in and go, all right, I'm going to create a theater piece. And you would have all the tools ready to go. So that's kind of my thoughts for the future. As far as Ferryman Collective in the future, we have a lot of things coming up, of course. Now, everyone, I ask you to cross your fingers. We have Find WiiILii and the pod being submitted for the Venice Film Festival. So fingers crossed we find that out next week. Very excited about that. And truly being a part of Find WiiILii has been a really wonderful experience for me. I think the show itself is a beautiful walk through what it means to have memories, what they mean to us, how they help us define ourselves, but also how they can be misleading and dangerous sometimes. But most importantly also, who has the rights to them, right? If a company can take them and they're past memories, and maybe we wouldn't even remember them to begin with, whose are they? Are they still ours? Are they the companies? Are they the people who remember us, right? If Color and I were in a situation, we might each remember it completely differently, but it would still be the same situation. And so whose memory is that? I don't know. So that, for me, was the most exciting part of getting invited to work on this piece and being able to bring it to life, and hopefully bringing those themes to light. Oh, we're back at the beginning of the video. So I'm just going to let this play while I talk, because it just shows beautiful Gumball Dreams. It shows some of our other past shows. Yes, so that's what's next for Find Wheelie. The other things that Ferryman Collective is up to is we're working with a few other world creators, specifically Kevin Mack and Meta Rick, and their worlds Uncanny Alley and Namawanki, which were showcased at Venice last year in the VR Worlds competition. We're working with them just like we worked with Color and His World Gumball Lounge to create shows based on their worlds, which is really fun because you get to take a world that's been worked on for years and tweaked, and then take and tease a story out of that and create a whole new play and utilize their worlds in a different way, but still honoring the stories and the thought process and the history that went into building those worlds. So that's one of our favorite things to do, is to work with other creators to help bring their visions to life. One of the other things I mentioned, the pod, which is another piece that started in the real world that we are helping bring into virtual reality. It's with an LA theater company called Spy Brunch, and they're a wonderful immersive theater company that do beautiful award-winning in real life theater pieces. And so we are working with them to take this piece, The Pod, which is about AI and outer space and what it means to be human. And we're bringing that into virtual reality. It's quite fun because obviously in the real world, it actually all took space in a garage that they just kind of built to look like a pod. But now we can actually make it look like they're in outer space. And we can do all sorts of fun things. We have a really lovely moment there with a piece of lettuce that you've created in outer space. It's great. And I think for me, I have a few other shows that I'm working on. I mentioned the show with Egypt, which is going to be a very personal project for me, teaching people about the Jewish holiday of Passover and sharing the Seder meal together and asking questions about what it means to have traditions and religion and how important those are moving forward in a world that seems intent on breaking us away from a lot of those, and that they do have a place, but maybe they shouldn't necessarily rule everything that we do. So I'm very excited to start working on that. And I think that's mostly it. And it's really lovely to be here, and I'm so glad to be able to share all of this with you, and I hope to talk with everyone more about this. If you have any questions about theater or directing or working in the virtual space, please come and talk to me.
Since we have a little time, can I ask a question to Whitten? I myself, major in theater. I first majored in music first, and then I majored in theater and then mastered in film. And I'm really interested in like how you started, like practically, like did you start from like writing a script, or like did you starting from like through ideas? Yeah, I'm just really curious, how did you start, like really practical elements way?
I mean, originally I was just performing in VR, but then for Find Wheelie, we had the Korean script, and so that was a translation. But as a director, I always try and start from the ideas first. What are we trying to get across? And so I write those down. So for Find Wheelie, it was the concept of memory, what it means to have memories, how they help us identify ourselves, and can they be trusted? So that, and then to work on the script from that angle where we want to get those ideas across.
And so far, what is your most difficulty in directing in VR?
Sound.
Sound.
Sound is tricky because of the latency. And specifically, we've had singing in a couple of our shows, and trying to time that correctly with the music is very tricky. It's near, at least in VR chat, near impossible to have two people singing at once. And also beyond that, there's not a lot of, I don't know what you'd say, like finesse with the sound in VR. You can either have it close to the other people, but if then you have actors that need to hear cues, you need to have the sound be universal. And there's not a really easy way to make it so that not everyone can hear all the sound. So sound for me is quite tricky in VR. I'm hopefully going to be working with a spatial audio company on one of my other shows, and I want to see if we can solve this problem.
Right. But what is the fun part? Because like you said, like you need like a specific motivation to approach this, especially this VR devices, and it's a very distinguished from other theater or like even immersive theater. So yeah, just.
Oh, the fun is that there's very little that you can't do in VR. Like I said, in Welcome to Respite, there's a beautiful moment where Alex and their father are talking about outer space, about going to outer space, and the attic disappears, and suddenly you're in outer space. You're floating there with your father, and it's a beautiful moment and really poignant, and then it gets ripped away from you very quickly.
Awesome.
And we can do that very effectively in VR in a way that we couldn't in other mediums. So I think that's the fun part about VR, is that there's very few limits to your imagination about what you can do there as a director.
Amazing. Very motivated. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go. Hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, there was a temple called the Temple of the Golden Buddha. And here they had this large golden Buddha statue that the monks adored. And they would meditate by it every day. And this country was at war at the time, and they heard that their soldiers were coming to pillage their monastery, and so they hid everything that they could. They didn't want to lose their golden statue, so they covered it with clay and sticks and dirt and mud. And the soldiers came and they stole the art and they stole the silverware, but they saw this statue and it just looked like it was rock and it wasn't worth taking. Well, the war continued for hundreds of years, so long that the monks didn't even realize that that gold statue was still gold, until one day one of the monks was meditating in front of it. He stood up and accidentally knocked off a corner off of it. And he ran to all the other monks and he said, "Hey guys, this is gold, what the hell?" And they ripped all the mud off, and they realized that their statue was golden all along. And I think that we come into this life the golden Buddha. We come into this life pure and golden and shining and beautiful. And then childhood and religion and society covers us up. It cakes us in mud until we don't even know what was there underneath. But I think sometimes in life something comes along and it knocks off a piece of that mud, and you see that gold underneath. And once you see that gold underneath, nothing else will ever again take priority over uncovering as much mud as you possibly can. So, my name is Christopher Lane Davis. I also go by Screaming Color. I'm very grateful to be here, and I guess my approach for my presentation is basically the story of why I'm here, how I ended up here in front of you today. So first and foremost, I'm a musician. I've created music for about 15 years now. That's my favorite thing to do. I have a bunch of psychedelic electronica. And my proudest achievement as far as my music career goes was a musical that I wrote about 7 years ago, an electronic dance musical, 2-hour one-man show called The Road to Dawn, and it's about how life gets better, dreams come true, don't kill yourself, keep moving forward, and I really believe that dreams come true. I believe it more and more every year as I continue to fulfill them. So I put on that musical, and it was a really fun thing for me at the time, but then I didn't touch music for a while, because then I didn't touch music for a while, and instead I focused on photography. I was supposed to zip through these ones. I'm sorry, it's not supposed to linger so long. So I did a bunch of crazy Photoshop stuff for a bunch of years, and I've sort of specialized in cloning myself, doing really weird, bizarre, surreal stuff. But that's not why I'm here to talk. I'm really trying to go through these quickly. Really a bunch of weird, creepy stuff. So I also like the contrast between light and dark, especially next to each other. I often say that the rainbows in Gumball Dreams pop so much because they're against the black background. So then I worked at a gay nightclub in Austin, Texas called Highland Lounge for about 3 years, and there I was the creative director. And because I was the creative director, it was my job to make the videos and the posters and everything. And so I got really good at 3D design, and I especially got good at making gay stuff in the nightclub, like rainbows and lasers and neon stuff. And so that kind of became my aesthetic. And anybody who's been in my world for about 12 seconds sees the correlation. And so after when the pandemic started, I obviously lost my job at the nightclub, and I moved out onto a ranch with my friend John, who was sort of halfway between my best friend and my grandpa. And because I lived with him for 3 years, I had all the time in the world to work on whatever I wanted to work on. I didn't have bills and I didn't have any responsibilities. So right around that time, I discovered VR chats. And so I discovered VR chat, and I loved the ability to, I loved about VR chat that you could create anything you could ever possibly conceive of. I decided to make a practice world, and I was just gonna to spend maybe a week or two building something really quick as a practice. And my thought process was, if I just find an object online and make that object really big, then that object becomes the environment, half the work is done, and then I can work onto something that I'm actually really more interested in working on. And I wanted to make a world because my thought process was, if I can create somewhere that people want to hang out long enough, then they can hear my music and be exposed to that. So that was the whole point. So I was looking online at objects online, and I was just like, that I could make big and we can go inside of. And I was like, so as soon as I saw this, I imagined people up in the top and with a nightclub with lasers and a disco ball. And so instead of spending 2 weeks on it, I spent 3 years on it, and that's still why I'm here in front of you today. So I'll just show you a couple slides of, so this is what I mentioned earlier about the aesthetic of the nightclub inspiring my world, because this exact rainbows, the exact disco ball, the exact checkerboard floor all became the exact aesthetic of what Club Gumball is. So I'll just show you some quick, some aesthetic of what the world's like. It's very rainbow, very psychedelic, and yeah. So moving on. Thank you. So after I worked on that for about 11 months, and then I wanted to make a version that was Quest compatible, because most VR users in the world right now are using the Quest since it's so affordable. And however, the thing with that is you have to optimize it quite a lot. And I was able to really stretch the boundaries of what should be possible on the Quest, because there's two main questions that everyone asks me consistently when they leave my world, and that is, how did you make this work on the Quest, and how many drugs were you on when you made this? Right after I released that game, it caught the attention of a company called Ferryman Collective, who she's already introduced us, and they asked me to join their team as the special effects and animations designer. And so she's already talked a lot about Welcome to Respite, so I don't need to touch on that as much, but I had the gift of being one of the actors in that, and one of my favorite moments from that show, one of the things that is special, is there's this moment where me, the actor playing the dad, gets to have this one-on-one with the audience member, and we tell him about the day that they were born, the day that they came home from the hospital, and there's this really intimate moment where we say, I took you from your mother's arms, and I looked into your eyes, and I knew that you were just going to grow up to be so strong and beautiful, and here you are, and I just love you more and more every day. And we've had people at the end of the show tell us that they were bawling their eyes out. My father never ever told me that. What you told me just now created this visceral change inside me that I doubt will ever go away. And that's one of the most magical things about immersive theater in general, which I love so much. Next, please. Another one of my favorite moments from that show was with her, actually, because she was the counterpart mom to my dad. And one of the magical things about immersive theater is because you're interacting with a real person, and they can say and do almost anything that they want, and therefore a ton of improv is required. And one of my favorite moments is when at the end of the show, mom asks, do you want me to sing you a bedtime song? And they said, yes, but I want you to sing it like rock and roll. And usually we sing, you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. But they asked rock and roll, so she immediately pivoted, and I joined her. She was like, you are my sunshine. And I was like, my only sunshine. And that request from the audience member is one of the most fun moments I've ever had doing that show. So it's a dance with the audience that is unlike anything else. One of the amazing things about VR is both in our show Welcome to Respite and Gumball Dreams, we give the audience member the choice, the opportunity at the beginning, not the opportunity, they have to choose their own avatar. In Gumball Dreams, it's just a red, green, or a blue alien. And in Welcome to Respite, it's a skin tone that matches your identity. And one of the cool things about that is when you choose who you are, it becomes very much more real who you are. Like, you know, when you create a character at the beginning of Skyrim, it's not just the character that the game gave you, that is you, and it makes it more real and it makes it more impactful that way. Then, as she's already touched on, we met this fantastic, gorgeous woman right here. No, we met all of them. We met, and she already talked about this. We licensed Respite, and then, so meanwhile, there's this woman named Deirdre V. Lyons who is on our team, and this is a totally irrelevant side note. There's us in Venice, just putting that out there. But she had the idea that we should make a show that happened in the video game that I had already created, and that's when Gumball Dreams was born. And that show, I already talked about it, but you interact with an alien, it's really great. Here's a cool behind-the-scenes shot of a bunch of buttons and triggers. Where you're sitting at the throne as the alien, it looks like the cockpit of an airplane because there's just so many buttons. You have to push this button to start that animation. You have to push this button if the audience member runs away, and you got to get them back. So that's kind of fun and at times very complicated. There's us at Rain Dance 2 years in a row. My favorite run that we took Gumball Dreams to was Kaohsiung Film Festival. And my friend John, the older man that I lived with on the ranch, when I lived with him, I met him 8 years ago. And from the moment he met me, he said, I believe in you so much. I see so much potential in you. He says, you're going to be an international success. And when you win your first international award, Christopher, I'm going to be in the audience cheering you on. It just so happened that week, while I was in Kaohsiung Film Festival, my friend John had a heart attack and he passed away. And so there was assigned seating in the theater, and almost every seat was full, but the one immediately to the left of me was empty, and the name on the chair was Jonah, which is pretty similar to John. And I fully believe that he kept his promise, and he was in the audience watching me as I got to walk across the stage and accept the grand prize award for Gumball Dreams. And so when I went back to Texas, I didn't really have a home anymore, and I stayed with my brother in his office for about a month and a half. And it was really, really special because I was contemplating death and love and life and really appreciating the people around you because you don't know when you're going to lose them. I had a really special Christmas with my siblings until moving back to Taiwan as fast as I possibly could, and I've lived in Taipei since January. I live in a really cool artist residency home, and there's a tattoo parlor in our basement. It's wild. And then Find WiiILii happened. I don't really need to touch on that, but it's been freaking awesome. And we took it to South by Southwest. And I took a picture at the beginning of this, and I was going to put us up there. It was going to be like a magic trick, but I couldn't get it to work on my phone. The reason I brought up the Golden Buddha stuff for my last point is because I think the magic of storytelling, the reason that we tell stories is the same reason that we're here on Earth, is to grow. And the magic thing about telling a story is you don't even have to experience your own hardship necessarily. You can watch the hero, this character's hardship, and you can still learn from that. And I think that the more emotional a story it is, the more impactful it is, the more you can learn from it. And the more immersive a story it is, the more emotional the story is. And so that's why I think that VR theater is the most powerful form of storytelling that there is to create change, to create growth, to create empathy, and therefore make this world a better place for everybody to live in. Thank you.
안녕하세요. 제 이름은 현미나입니다. 원래 영어로도 이제 발표를 준비를 했었는데 한국 분들도 많이 계시다고 해서 저는 이제 잠들 깨시라고 한국어로 발표를 해보려고 하고요. 이제 저는 파인드리의 크리에이터이자 첫 번째 에피소드에 이제 공동 연출을 맡고 있습니다. 저희 다 같이 공동 연출한 최수영 감독님도 여기 와 계신데요. 이건 저희 이제 포스터고 앞에서도 계속 보셨고. 이제 앞에서 위튼과 이제 스크리밍 컬러가 해줬듯이 저희는 이제 한글 버전을 먼저 한국에서 기어이에서 제작을 했었고 페리맨과 함께 이제 영어 버전을 만들어서 이번 부천영화제에서는 이제 한글판만 공연을 하지만 영어판으로 더 많은 관객들을 만나기를 이제 기대를 하고 있어요. 파인들리에 대해서 이런저런 이야기들을 많이 해주셔서 저는 최초에 이 작품을 기획을 하게 된 이야기부터 짧게 어떤 연출적인 부분, 그 다음에 제가 이 파인드 윌리라는 SF 이머시브 시어터 작품을 공간을 어떻게 디자인을 하게 됐는지 이런 부분들을 좀 더 이야기를 나누려고 합니다. 제가 이제 원래 영어로 준비를 했었어가지고 이제 PPT는 다 영어로 되어 있는데요. 글자가 별로 없으니까 걱정 안 하셔도 되고 Shaping the Uncanny Spaces라고 했는데 이제 제가 VR에 처음 매력을 느끼게 된 것이 이제 VR을 처음 경험했을 때 그게 이제 2017년도 부천영화제였어요. 그때 이제 여기 큐레이터인 종민 PD님, 제이도 만나게 됐고요. 이제 그 당시에 이제 VR, 제가 말하는 VR은 그 당시에도 6DoF VR이었어요. 그냥 360이 아니고 그걸 처음 경험했을 때 제가 느낀 건 이거 굉장히 크리스토퍼 놀란 감독의 인셉션이 가능하게 만드는 도구 같다. 이렇게 생각을 했던 것 같아요. 지금도 그 마음은 변함이 없고 제가 굉장히 좋아하는 영화이기도 한데 제가 그렇게 느꼈던 이유는 이제 이 기억이 아까도 이제 위튼이 이 공간이 어떤 기억, 우리가 어떤 기억을 보지만 이게 다른 사람의 기억일 수도 있고 내 기억일 수도 있고 누구의 기억인지 모르게 되는 그 지점을 이야기를 했듯이 이 식스도프의 VR 콘텐츠를 경험을 했을 때 이 어떻게 만들어진 공간인지에 따라서 즉각적으로 관람자, 체험자의 기억이 된다는 사실이 저는 되게 흥미롭다고 생각을 하고 있어요. 근데 이제 그게 어떤 콘텐츠는 왜 가능하고 왜 어떤 콘텐츠는 같은 식스도프지만 그냥 영화를 본 듯한 내가 외부인으로서 남게 되는 걸까? 어떻게 하면은 내가 이게 완전하게 내 기억처럼 느껴지고 어떻게 관객에게 자기 자신의 기억을 불러일으키게 해서 관객이 원래 가지고 있던 기억과 이 VR 콘텐츠를 봤을 때의 기억이 연결될 수 있을까? 이 지점에 대한 고민을 계속 하게 되는 것 같아요. 그리고 그 부분이 제가 작품들을 볼 때 항상 굉장히 흥미롭게 여겨지는 지점인 것 같거든요. 그래서 이제 저는 어떤 기이한 공간을 만드는 것, 기이하다는 게 꼭 기괴하다는 의미는 아니고 우리가 알고 있는 익숙한 부분에 어떤 색깔을 더했을 때 이런 공간이 만들어지는가에 이제 관심을 갖고 파인드윌리의 공간을 디자인을 하게 됐어요. 2017년에 부천영화제에서 종민 PD님을 만나서 영화제가 이제 끝난 이후에 약간 서로 일정들이 다 소강 상태일 때 같이 파인드윌리라는 아이템을 기획을 하게 됐었어요. 당시에 이제 한국에 있는 CG 회사랑 같이 협업을 해서 진행을 하려고 했었는데 파인드윌리를 못 보신 분들도 많이 있을 것 같아요. 그래서 스토리는 뒤에서 조금 더 설명을 해드리려고 하는데 일단은 처음 가져왔던 생각은 시간과 공간이 뒤틀린 어떤 그런 공간에 사람에게서 떨어져 나온 기억 조각들이 흩어져 있다. 이 정도의 아이디어를 가지고 이제 시작하게 된 스토리였어요. 그리고 그 흩어져 있는 기억들을 윌리라고 당시에 이제 이름을 붙였어요. 이제 막 VR을 보기 시작했었고 그때는 아무런 어떤 불가능함 같은 거나 제한 사항들을 염두에 두지 않은 채로 기획을 했었기 때문에 종민 PD님이랑 진짜 몇 시간씩 몇 날 며칠 몇 달 동안 되게 재밌게 기획을 했던 그런 기억이 남아 있습니다. 근데 이제 당시에 이제 회사 사정으로 제작을 못 하게 되면서 이제 그거는 이제 장롱 안에 이제 들어가 있는 채로 좀 아쉬움이 남는 프로젝트로 이렇게 남았었는데 이제 그게 그렇게 취소가 되고 나니까 좀 아쉬움이 남아서 VR 콘텐츠를 만들어 보고 싶은데 우리가 지금 기술도 없고 어떻게 만들어야 되는지도 정확히 모르는데 어떻게 해야 될까 이런 고민을 하던 와중에 이제 한국예술종합학교에 공부를 하러 들어가게 됐습니다. 2018년에 이제 거기서 이제 멀티미디어랑 VR 콘텐츠를 공부를 했는데요. 당시에 이제 선택지가 두 개였어요. 이제 비싼 장비들 아니면 모션 캡처 이런 거를 활용해 보려면 학교에 들어가든지 아니면 회사에 가든지 이런 선택지가 있었는데 저는 이제 학교를 선택을 했고 그 꽤 만족스러운 학교 생활을 보냈어요. 거기서 이제 굉장히 많은 프로젝트들을 만들어 볼 수 있었고 약간 초기 단계의 어떤 이머시브 시어터 작품도 제작을 할 수 있었고 당시에 이제 제작했던 9VR 같은 경우에는 지금 여기 부천에 같이 전시하고 있는 소녀 램프 라디오라는 그 컨텐츠가 있는데 거기 최민혁 감독님이랑 같이 작업을 했던 프로젝트였어요. 그 프로젝트도 이제 가오슝이라든지 사우스 바이 사우스웨스트에 이제 초대를 받았던 그런 작품이었고 그게 이제 2명이 함께하는 프로젝트였어요. 그리고 그 당시에 그 프로젝트를 하면서 이제 저희 기어이를 공동 창업하게 되는 그리고 저희 파인드윌리의 공동 연출인 최수영님도 만나게 됐었죠. 그래서 굉장히 재밌는 학교 생활을 보내고 다시 마음의 준비, 약간 파인드윌리를 다시 만들고 싶다 그런 마음이 들었을 때 2020년에 저희 기어이의 공동 창업자 5명이 모여서 종민 PD님을 포함해서 기어이를 차렸어요. 그 해 2020년 코로나가 터졌어요. 그래가지고 창업을 하고 바로 다음 달에 이제 코로나가 터졌는데, 그래서 이제 바로 또 제작을 들어가지는 못하고 그 기획 아이템을 칸 디벨롭먼트 피칭 세션에 넣어서 그때 이제 처음으로 글로벌하게 소개를 하게 됐었죠. 그래서 그때부터 조금씩 기획은 했지만 그래도 바로 기획을 하지 못하고 있다가 저희 팀에 이제 여기 다른 팀원분들도 와 있는데 개발을 해주시는 정민님이라든지 그다음에 이제 프로듀서 역할을 해주시는 뭐 소희님, 그다음에 지금은 안 계신 다른 프로듀서분들 같은 경우에 이제 합류를 하게 되면서 프로젝트가 박차를 가하게 되었습니다. 그래서 기어이에서는 여러 프로젝트를 이제 2020년부터 했었는데 이 뭐 이항정이라든지 그다음에 여기 웰컴 투 레스피트 한글판, 그다음에 뭐 미싱 픽처스, 그다음에 이제 파인드 윌리까지 저희 회사에서 제작을 했어요. 근데 이제 웰컴 투 레스피트를 했던 게 굉장히 파인드 윌리를 만드는데 영향을 많이 미쳤어요. 파인드 윌리를 처음 기획했을 때는 싱글 플레이로 기획을 했었는데 이제 웰컴 투 레스피트를 하고 그 당시에 이제 이머시브 시어터들을 경험을 하면서 공동 연출인 수영님이 이런 이머시브 시어터 포맷으로 진행을 해보면 어떨까 하는 제안을 했었고, 이제 파인드 윌리는 사실 굉장히 큰 세계관을 가지고 있는데 그 중에서 첫 번째 에피소드로 관객을 만날 때 이머시브 시어터가 정말 강력한 도구가 될 것 같다, 강력한 방식이 될 것 같다라고 생각을 해서 진행을 하게 됐습니다. 트레일러 못 보신 분 있나요? 아, 네. 그러면은 한번 틀어주시겠어요?
이오이그의 순간이동 장치를 이용하는 고객 중 5% 정도는 신체 제조합 시 기억의 일부가 유실되는 것으로 보고되고 있습니다. 유실되는 기억의 양은 매우 적어서 고객들은 자신이 어떤 기억을 잃어버렸는지 깨닫지 못하는 수준입니다. 파인드 윌리 팀이 바로 그 고객의 기억 데이터를 수거하여 관리하는 업무를 담당합니다. 수거된 기억 데이터들, 우리들은 그걸 윌리라고 부릅니다.
순간이동 장치를 이용한 사람들은 자기들이 뭘 잊어버렸는지도 모릅니다. 정과장님. 망각은 우리 일상이잖아요.
윌리는 오류야. 내가 여기서 했던 모든 일들은 이 오류를 고치기 위한 거였고.
이거는 이제 그 트레일러를 보고서 이야기를 짐작하실 수도 있겠지만 이 파인드 윌리는 지금 저희가 살고 있는 이 세계와 같은 타임라인이지만 다른 우주, 그러니까 평행 우주 같은 세계라고 생각을 하시면 돼요. 배경도 서울이고 여기 등장하는 이 그 순간이동 장치거든요. 이게 순간이동 장치를 만든 이오이그라는 회사는 기어이를 뒤집은 스펠링입니다. 이 회사에 순간이동 장치를 이제 사람들이 비행기를 타듯이 쓸 수 있게 된 시대예요. 2023년에 서울에서. 한국에만 있는 건 아니고 전 세계 어디든지 갈 수 있는 그런 순간이동 장치인데, 이 순간이동 장치를 사용하면 사람들은 모르지만 기억의 일부가 누락이 되는 거예요. 그래서 이오이그에서는 가상현실 시스템을 만들어서 신입사원들을, 꼭 신입사원들은 아니지만 아무튼 파인드 윌리 팀을 만들어서 이 누락된 기억 조각을 찾는 임무에 투입을 하게 됩니다. 공연 안에서 관객들은 신입사원의 역할을 수행을 하게 되고요. 이 가상 공간에 들어가서 선임 연구원, 그러니까 상사를 따라다니면서 임무를 수행을 하게 돼요. 처음에 이제 게임처럼 시작이 되지만 점점 이제 스토리라인이 발견이 되고 그 안에 숨어있는 다른 불청객이 등장을 하면서 이야기는 좀 더 서스펜스를 갖고 이제 클라이막스로 치닫게 됩니다. 이거는 이제 처음 시작하는 공간이에요. 저희가 굉장히 여러 개의 공간이 있는데 일부러 대비를 굉장히 줬던 게 이오이그를 상징하는 공간들, 그 다음에 실제 세계와 다르게 보이는 되게 비현실적인 공간들과 실제 저희가 배경으로 사용한 동대문에 있는 창신동 지역, 이렇게 크게 대비를 두었어요. 그래서 이제 이오이그라는 회사가 소유한 이 공간들은 하얗고 좀 전문적이고 이런 느낌으로 이제 진행을 했었고, 여기에 처음 들어온 신입사원들은 이제 교육을 받고 이런저런 정보를 듣고 그리고 또 신입사원으로 이제 복장을 갈아입게 됩니다. 그래서 이제 아까 처음에 이 어떤 기이한 공간을 만들어내는 거에 대해서 제가 관심을 갖고서 파인들리 작업을 했다고 했는데, 이제 여러분들 혹시 가장 최근에 길을 잃은 게 언제이신가요? 저는 원래 이제 길을 잘 잃는 편이 아닌데, 이 작품을 이제 다시 제작하기로 기어이 팀원들이랑 정하고 나서 이제 돌아다니다가 길을 잃었어요. 이제 그날은 제가 다른 약속이 없고 딱 하나 이제 친구랑 갤러리에서 어떤 퍼포먼스를 보기로 한 날이었는데, 지도를 따라서 이제 갔고, 거기 집에서 버스 2정거장밖에 안 되는 곳이라서 이제 걸어다니고 있었는데 가까이 갈수록 뭔가 잘못되다고 느꼈어요. 근데 실제로 그 장소에 갔더니 아무것도 없었거든요. 그러니까 친구한테 연락해보니까 공연장은 굉장히 멀리 떨어진 곳에 있었고, 어찌된 영문인지 모르겠지만 어쨌든 그날 저는 길을 잃었습니다. 근데 그 창신동에서 길을 잃고 나서 처음에 갈 때는 이제 몰랐지만 굉장히 언덕을 많이 올라온 상태였고, 그리고 주변은 되게 낯선 풍경이었고, 이제 오래된 어떤 집들, 벽돌 집들, 이제 가정집들, 그런 곳이 있었어요. 한국에 이제 살고 계신 분들도 있고 이 영화제 때문에 방문하신 분들도 계시겠지만 굉장히 높은 건물들, 그리고 또 이 부천 지역 같은 경우에도 이제 낮은 집들, 그런 아니면 좁은 골목 이런 거를 많이 보진 못하셨을 거예요. 근데 이 창신동이라는 지역은 이제 동대문 옆에 있는 지역으로서 채석장이 원래 있었던 곳이에요. 그래서 뭐 한국 사람들이 아직 지금보다 훨씬 더 못 살던 시절에 채석장 아래에 이제 집이 없는 사람들이 가서 집을 짓고 살았던 곳이었거든요. 그러다 보니까 그대로 계속 조금씩 발전을 한 거라서 여전히 골목이 굉장히 좁고 골목이 다 다르게 생겼고 굉장히 미로 같은 지역이었어요. 그래서 길을 잃은 김에 이곳에서 조금 더 헤매보자 하고 다니다가 굉장히 매력적인 공간들을 찾았고, 저희 팀원들이 이 파인드 윌리가 특히 이런 SF 콘텐츠나 아니면 VR 콘텐츠의 배경이 되는 공간들이 그 한국인 경우는 거의 못 봤는데 우리 배경이 한국이었으면 좋겠다, 우리가 좀 익숙한 지역이었으면 좋겠다 이런 이야기들 하던 상황이었어서 같이 창신동을 방문을 해보게 되었어요. 여기가 우리의 다음 무대로 적합할까? 그래서 갔는데 그때는 엄청 더운 여름이었는데 거의 등산하듯이 막 이제 땀을 흘리면서 이렇게 왔다 갔다 했었는데요. 이거는 이제 파인들리 공연 안에서 처음 관객들이 이 전체를 보게 되는 그런 전망대에서의 풍경이에요. 실제로 창신동도 이렇게 굴곡이 많이 지고 이렇게 채석장이 그대로 여전히 남아 있고 한 공간인데, 저희가 그거를 이제 지리적으로 그대로 옮겨오지는 않았고 일부 가공해서 필요한 부분들을 이제 이어서 새로운 어떤 가상의 창신동을 창조를 해냈습니다. 그래서 이제 보시면 이제 실제 창신동의 어떤 이미지들이고, 이게 이제 구성된 이제 모델링으로 구성된 그런 이미지들이에요. 그래서 이제 창신동은 벽돌로 된 집들이 굉장히 많고 이제 문들도 굉장히 독특한 모양들이 많이 있었어요. 누군가의 기억을 트리거하게 되는 그런 요소들이 저는 이런 질감도 굉장히 큰 영향을 미친다고 생각을 했었는데, 그래서 팀원들이랑 같이 이 공간이 갖고 있는 질감이라든지 아니면 문의 문양이라든지 이런 걸 리서치를 같이 하면서 어떤 부분들을 더 살릴 수 있을까 이런 고민들을 많이 했던 것 같습니다. 이 신입사원들 같은 경우에 이 공간을 같이 탐험을 하면서 그 스토리의 초반에는 창신동을 같이 보게 돼요. 실제로 대사 안에도 창신동에 대해 소개하는 내용들이 들어가 있고, 그 어느 지역에서 참여하는 사람이라도 저희가 영문 버전으로 이제 변환을 할 때에도 이 창신동 설정은 그대로 유지를 했었어요. 그걸 이제 한국에 와본 분들은 또 알아보는 분도 있었고, 심지어 어떤 반응들이 있었는지 나중에 더 듣고 싶네요. 근데 이게 이제 저희 신입사원들의 모습이고, 그다음에 신입사원들은 이 잠자리채 같은 거를 가지고 윌리를 잡으러 다닙니다. 그래서 이곳이 제가 길을 잃었던 곳이에요. 이게 제가 가서 방문했을 때 사진인지 이제 나중에 필드트립 갔을 때 사진인지 잘 기억이 안 나지만, 아무튼 이게 저희 이제 공연에서 가장 중요한 어떤 두 사람이 만나게 되는 그 부분이에요. 그리고 이게 이제 가장 저한테 영감을 많이 줬던 공간이었고요. 이 창신동이 재밌는 거는 그 시장이 있어요. 그래서 이 시장 골목도 굉장히 좁은데 시장에는 다른 곳들이랑 다르게 이제 붉은색 천이 굉장히 많이 있어서 이거를 또 이제 공간 안에 살리려고 노력을 했어요. 이게 시장은 나라마다 어떤 조금씩은 이제 모습이 다르겠지만 그 가지고 오는 느낌은 비슷하다고 생각을 했는데 시장 골목을 같이 달려가면서 추격하는 그런 장면을 이제 표현을 했습니다. 이제 우리 스크리닝 컬러가 이펙트를 더해준 부분들을 제가 영상을 가져온 건데요. 이제 자칫 그냥 심심해 보일 수도 있는 시장에 이렇게 우리에게 친숙한 이런 이발소라든지 그다음에 조금 넘어가 보면은 이런 팬이라든지 이거는 시장뿐만 아니라 도시에도 있었던 부분인데 이런 것들을 더해서 조금씩 생동감을 살렸어요. 이제 가상현실 공간을 만들었을 때 되게 쉽게 가짜처럼 느끼는 그런 순간들이 많다고 생각을 하거든요. 근데 이제 그게 신경이 안 쓰일 때도 있지만 이런 작은 디테일들이 공간을 어떤 향수를 불러일으키게 된다고 느껴서 저는 이제 이 후작업에 굉장히 만족을 하고 있습니다. 그리고 이 계단을 저희가 이제 실제로 올랐었는데 이 가상공간 안에서 이 사람들이 체험을 하면 이 계단을 정말 싫어하기도 해요. 정말 높거든요, 계단이. 이제 클라이막스로 치닫는 장면에서의 계단인데 이 장면도 이 창신동이란 공간에서 굉장히 올라가고 싶진 않지만 매력적으로 느꼈던 이 계단이 있었어서 가지고 왔었습니다. 그리고 이제 여기는 창신동에 있는 산마루 놀이터라는 곳인데요. 이제 창신동 지역이 원래 봉제 공장들이 많이 있어서 이제 골무를 형상화한 그런 놀이터라고 해요. 그래서 이 공간을 이제 가상현실로 가져왔을 때 이 붉은색 건물이 전체에서 어디서나 보였으면 좋겠다라고 생각을 하면서 이제 맵을 만들었었고 이제 그게 굉장히 효과적이었습니다. 그래서 사람들이 뭐 눈치를 못 채는 관객들도 있지만 이제 이머시브 시어터 특성답게 자기가 관객들이 원하는 만큼 질문을 하는 만큼 재밌는 정보들을 얻어갈 수 있고 그래서 이 놀이터가 뭔지 이제 배우들한테 물어보면 이 놀이터의 백그라운드 스토리를 좀 더 들을 수 있는 그런 기믹들이 있습니다. 그리고 이거는 이제 아까 말씀드렸듯이 이제 창신동의 어떤 현실적인 공간들이랑 굉장히 대비되는 공간들을 이제 이오이그의 공간들로 설정을 했다고 했는데요. 이건 이제 외부로 나가게 되면서 이제 월드에 글리치가 생기는 그런 공간들이고, 그다음에 여기는 이제 중간에 등장하는 사막. 이제 저희가 이오이그의 건물, 그다음에 창신동, 그다음에 이제 사막 지역 이렇게 크게 구분을 할 수가 있는데. 여기서 이제 어떤 이벤트들이 벌어지고 중간에 굉장히 중요한 이벤트가 벌어지는 장소이자 이제 엔딩을 맞이하게 되는 그런 공간이에요. 그래서 이게 저희 전체의 공간이었고, 그다음에 윌리. 처음에 이제 윌리라는 단어를 만들었을 때는 이거에 세부적인 의미를 담진 않았었는데 그냥 윌리였어요. 그냥 윌리라고 불렀어요. 근데 영문판으로 번안을 하면서 이제 배우분들이랑 이제 위튼이 이거에 뭔가 굉장히 그럴싸한 의미를 담고 싶다 이런 이야기를 해주는 거예요. 그래서 단어를 만들었어요. Are you ready? Yeah. 이제 준비되기 전까지 이제 좀 더 보여드리자면은 윌리를 저희가 이제 공간 안에서는 좀 정적으로 만들기는 했는데 정적인 공간 안에서 약간의 움직이는 것들이 초기 기획부터 이제 작품으로 만들어지기까지 항상 제가 윌리에 대해서 가지고 있던 이미지였어요. 근데 이제 공간을 만드는 것보다 윌리를 어떻게 형상화할 것인가, 이제 다른 사람의 기억을 어떻게 형상화할 것인가 이게 굉장히 어려운 부분이었는데 저한테 이제 영감을 줬던 이미지들은 약간 이런 시네마그래프 같은 느낌의 이미지들이었고.
So WiiILii, Deirdre and I talked about it, and we had asked, what does it mean? Why WiiILii? Because it sounds like anagram. So we came up with that it means wayward, intellectual information, logistically integrated instances. I don't know if you can translate that. Basically, the idea that it was pieces of intellectual information that were consistently created by use of a teleporter. So, but it sounded very sci-fi and corporate, and we felt like it was important to have the language of IOIG, of the company, be very specific and corporate versus the language that is often used to describe memories, which is very fanciful.
Yeah, thank you. 네, 굉장히 이제 전문가적인 그런 단어를 만들었는데 그건 저희 한글판에서도 다시 또 역으로 번역을 해서 가지고 와서 이제 새로운 한글 버전 스크립트에 녹여내는 그런 작업이 있었습니다. 그래서 이제 짧게 보여드리자면은 윌리 어떤 비주얼라이징 하는 과정들이고 이 과정에서 이제 실제 그림을 그리기도 했지만 어떤 그 미드저니 같은 AI 생성 AI를 활용해서 최대한 이제 원하는 느낌의 이미지를 뽑아보기도 했습니다. 그래서 이제 이런 형태의 어떤 조각난 느낌의 윌리들을 공간 안에 설정을 했었고 아니면 일부가 과장된 실제 사람들의 기억이 어떤 1대1로 똑같이 대응되진 않는다고 생각해서 어떻게 어떤 감정을 담아볼 수 있을까 그래서 조각 같은 형태로 이제 진행을 했었습니다. 그래서 이게 실제 공간에 담긴 윌리들이고요. 그 다음에 이제 넘어갈게요. 이거는 이제 여기 써놓긴 했는데 이제 익숙한 낯선 공간에서 만나는 어떤 익숙한 것들 이런 부분이었는데 아까 보여드렸던 이 잠자리채랄지 어떤 도구로 잡을지에 대한 고민을 또 되게 많이 했었거든요. 그 다음에 이런 화분들 처음에 만나는 윌리가 이런 화분 역할을 하는데 실제로 이제 이 지역을 돌아다닐 때 만났던 특이한 풀들 이런 것들이 영감을 줬었어요. 한국에서 많이 볼 수 있는 길고양이랑 그다음에 이제 인터넷에서 봤던 어떤 저런 밈들을 활용해서 어떤 굉장히 긴 고양이를 만들었던 그런 게 있었습니다. 네, 그렇게 해서 이제 이런 방식으로 이제 공간을 구성을 했었고 도전은 좀 더 테크니컬한 부분에 좀 더 집중이 되어 있기 때문에 혹시 VR 챗으로 이머시브 시어터를 만드는 거에 대해서 궁금하신 부분이 있으면 이제 저라든지 이제 또 스크리밍 컬러 그다음에 저희 팀의 이제 정민님한테 이제 끝나고 나서 좀 더 이야기를 나눠볼 수 있을 것 같습니다.
안녕하세요. I'm Katsutoshi Machiba. Maybe my time is very short. I'm a producer and director of XR films at Cinemalip in Japan. So in addition, I teach XR film at the Graduate School of Tokyo University of the Arts and Festival Director of Japan's first XR Film Festival, Beyond the Frame Festival. The XR industry is still small in Japan, so I am working on various activities every day to make it bigger. So this time as XR producer, so I would like to introduce various creative situations in the metaverse space that are now attracting a little more attention in Japan. So centering on the work TYPEMAN, a new type of performance in the metaverse space that I produced. And let me introduce TYPEMAN. TYPEMAN is a theater type content in which actors and the performers perform in real time in metaverse space. And the actors and the multiple audiences, maybe 4 audiences, enter one virtual world at a time to enjoy the story. While watching the actors perform up close and communicate with each other. And the TYPEMAN actually performs like this, please. Yeah. So this side is a real performer, and then this is TYPEMAN. So same time. And so actor puts on the avatar of the TYPEMAN and plays the character in real time. And since there are no lines in this piece, the actor has to express the story and emotions through the gesture. For this reason, we spent a lot of time thinking about the choreography. Also, the TYPEMAN and audiences can communicate in the same space, since each audience has a different personality and behavior. The actor changes the choreography and sometimes the story depending on how the audience is acting each time. Yeah, this is the audience. And each person's reaction to the experience is different, like this. And some people were very passionate, while others were very difficult to read. One of the participants was an elderly woman who did not know how to operate the device, and the TYPEMAN acted out the scene to match her. And the TYPEMAN was nominated for the Venice Immersive in the cross-reality category at the 1790s Venice International Film Festival. So it later won the Premio Bizarro d'Oro 2022 Best Short Film, and our independently selected by independent Italian film critics. Furthermore, the film has received high acclaim from film festivals around the world, including Raindance Immersive and the Kaohsiung Film Festival. So it is so well received that tickets sell out in no time. When it is scheduled to be performed at film festivals around the world. So this content is a live performance that takes place on VRChat. We made this piece with people from the VRChat community. We don't know their real names, and also we don't know what they do. And we made this work using VRChat and only Discord. It was a free exchange of ideas, not limited by distance, time, title, or physicality that allowed us to create completely new work. How would this work turn out for us? We could not imagine it until the very end. This is coordinator Tanabe is real work is Japanese noodle owner, and so Midnight he made some word in the VRChat. Right now, I am focused on the Japanese VRChat community. The XR industry is still small in Japan, but an interesting culture is emerging in Japanese VRChat. There is an atmosphere of something new being born, somewhat like the otaku culture that made Japan's manga culture so big. Ghost Club is an exclusive word for participants every Tuesday and Saturday. The people who gather here are creators, performers, and many other types of people. Let us introduce some of the works that are associated with this space. This film, Q, is a word that was also invited to the Venice International Film Festival last year. Oh, very dark. So actually, so this content was made by Obake-san. So his VRChat ID, Obake-san. No sound. Something here? Yeah. Okay. Something like that. Please, next page. And this work called Ambient is a world where user can experience a few minutes of world that will eventually be submerged and destroyed. While it rains, users can enjoy the sound of the rain or solve the mysteries hidden in the world. This is the work in which participants can freely spend time until the world destruction. So this content was made by Pi60. Okay, please finish. Okay, and so here's this contents made by Kinu. So he is an artist who has recently attracted a lot of attention. So he expresses his poetry reading in a uniquely created world. In addition to the works introduced here, many new forms of expression are being created using VRChat.
넘어갔죠? 플롯 넘어갔죠? 플롯 넘어갔죠?
Okay, next please. Sanrio has been hosting an event called Sanrio Virtual Festival in Metaverse space for 2 years now. By hosting this event, Sanrio is successfully energizing the Japanese VR chat creator community. The event is a 2-day showcase of more than 50 works of art in the Metaverse space. So actually, Sanrio decided to take place also Sanrio Virtual Festival in this year, and so maybe I will produce some content for the Sanrio. Okay, next please. So back to TYPEMAN again. Right now, TYPEMAN is starting a new initiative. Typically, TYPEMAN was a production in which only one performer and 4 experiencers could participate. In future performances, more than 20 audience members will be able to enjoy this work. This performance will answer to many requests to see TYPEMAN. Separate the guests into 2 groups, VR audiences and the screen viewers. The structure goes like this. For the screen sheet, performer perform in front of the audience. For VR sheet, 4 audiences plus 1 cameraman enter the metaverse space. Cameraman will enter the metaverse space and film the performance. Footage is then projected onto a screen in the background of the performer. This initiative has led to new developments. Until now, TYPEMAN could only be experienced at film festival and video events. Now we have been invited to a very large theater festival in Japan. I feel that we have seen new possibilities for XR productions. I would like to continue to challenge new possibilities for XR in the future. Okay, this is TYPEMAN. Okay, next please. My presentation is it, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I'm going to stand up because I've been sitting down for a long time. Thank you, Jay, first, and thank you, Boram, and thank you for BIFAN for the opportunity to be here and to share our work. I'm the artistic director of Riverbed Theater, which is based in Taiwan. We formed 25 years ago with our producer, Suling, and we're still creating these image-based theater performances. And so today, my presentation is going to be slightly different. I'm going to talk about my background in theater, about creating these immersive experiences, and the basic idea behind them all is with so much input that we have every day, like images and sound and music and conversations, the foods we eat, the places we go, what gets inside of all the things that we encounter, what gets inside our hearts and our minds, and what stays with us. And so this idea of how we go beyond the everyday and create an experience, a moment where something happens. And so I'm starting off with this quote by Albert Einstein, the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. A lot of film and theater and art sort of represents or re-represents everyday life. But I live in everyday. I live here. And so with our theater, with our performance, with our VR experiences, we're trying to take the audience someplace new. And so I'm going to start off with this image here. It's sort of difficult to see. Everyone on stage, duck. Okay, so this is a painting by the surrealist artist René Magritte. And if you can see it, it's an image of a mermaid. But this image of a mermaid is reversed. So instead of having the woman being the top of the fish, thank you, color, we've inverted it, right? And so if you look at the actual image of the fish and the mermaid, what makes it interesting is not the technical painting, but it's this inversion of how we take something familiar and defamiliarize it. And so the same here, when you look at this cage with a bird's egg inside of it, just the size of the egg, like how is this possible? Or a man looking at a mirror and instead of seeing his face, he sees the back of his head. Or one of Magritte's most famous paintings, a man standing with the apple floating in front of his face. If you remove the apple, it's just a man standing there. It's not interesting, it's not compelling. So Magritte's a better painter than me, but technically it's just sort of, it's a painting of a man or an apple. And it's this combination of these two images, this taking of the apple, placing it here, at this sense of the mystery, of the unknown. And so this process, if you remove the apple, the painting becomes forgettable. And it's in its inclusion, it's its placement there, it's its color, it's its composition, where something different happens. We take the world and we start spinning it, right? And how, as artists, do we spin the world? So these are some of our early works. This is a piece we did in 2000 called Rainbow Factory. The image is really simple. A woman kisses the other woman on the forehead, a very gentle movement. If it happens in everyday life, a kiss. But because when she kisses, she has this green fluid that runs out of her mouth. So suddenly, something that's soft and gentle changes. Right? If you remove the green, again, the image doesn't exist. Here we're combining live performance with paintings, using clay to sort of create a head where the head can actually open up and you can reach inside. So before Whitten was talking about some of with VR, we're able to create what's impossible in the everyday life. And with our theater, it's also trying to how do we create these poetic moments where it goes beyond obviously we're not going to pull open our own head, hopefully. This performance with the traditional Nanguan company in Taiwan, beautiful movements, but we start inserting these yellow lines or these poles in relationship to the body, and something different starts to happen. You see even color. Here, a woman with a suspended elephant at the start of our new show. So it's a life-size elephant, not real. For this piece is one of our early works, and we covered the stage floor with 2 tons of coffee grounds. And so we got it from a factory. And so when you walked into the space, there was a sense of the smell of coffee, the color of the texture. And suddenly you enter this theater where many people had been before, but just the element, the addition of this material element changed our relationship to the world and made it the space itself. We would inhale the space. So we weren't just seeing it, it would enter our body through our nose as well. So olfactory elements. You could also bury performers in the stage space. So again, the space becomes a character. It's interacting with the performers. This is a piece based on the Futurist cookbook, which was written by Marinetti in 1930s, an Italian artist. And so here we collaborated with a chef, and we had 24 audience members, and so each member was seated at this table, and an entirely enclosed space. In the final image, the upstage wall would fall down, and you could see the area outside of this space. And it's starting to incorporate, so again, we had here pumpkin soup. So the audience was drinking pumpkin soup from a test tube, but drinking through a straw. And so the soup itself was delicious, but somehow drinking it through this straw, it changed the experience of it. Or if you see here, there's the head piece on the stage. And for this picture here, we have, it's a 4-course meal. But each course is in a pillbox. So the size of a salad, a piece of chicken, a sandwich, and a piece of cheesecake, but each piece is smaller than your fingernail. And so playing with scale, playing with how we think about food or portions, and changing it, right? This is a piece we did based on Yayoi Kusama, and so we built our own theater inside of the theater, and so the audience was limited to 50 people, and then we had these 5 spaces that would shift in front of the audience and sort of slide across the space, and so the audience was stationary, but the images would change in front of them. And so this would be the first space, and then you see this space here with the door. The actors would pass through the door, and then the whole stage would slide across, and you were then entered into the second room, which would then pull back the other direction. And between the two spaces, so one is on that side, two is here, there was another space with a figure suspended against the wall. And then the fourth space, and the space was only 150 centimeters tall. And so physically, the actor's body had to respond to the environment. Again, the space is a character. The environment is an actor in the performance. It's not just a background. And then the fifth space, was mirroring the audience seating. And so in the final image, the audience is sort of looking at a space which is the same as where they're seating. And so suddenly they're seeing their same space in front of them. Next, please. This is a piece that we did in 2016 that premiered in Taiwan and then performed at Gwangju at the Asian Culture Center as part of a festival there. And so we have 60 audience members sitting around the stage floor at 300 centimeters high, and then they're looking down at the stage floor. And so here you see a picture of the audience looking down, and we had two projectors projecting on the stage floor. Next, please. And so the whole stage floor became this large projection screen. So it wasn't like I'm watching the video on the wall. The video is on the floor, and even though the audience isn't immersed on the stage floor, visually, their eyes travel down, and you're sort of drawn into the world. And so we could immediately, the same in VR, we could change the spaces, you know, as quickly as you can change the next image. Next, please. And so we could have animation capturing live images and distorting them, playing with scale, so the human head on stage is this big, and then suddenly it could become 5 feet tall or 10 feet tall. So being able to play with scale, changing the human proportions. Next, please. And actually, we'll skip through this. This is a video piece, but I think with time, I'm just going to sort of go. Next, please. And this is sort of, so we've been doing these experimental performances for the past 25 years. In 2011, we started a new series of performances called the Just For You series. And it was taking this idea of immersion, but also really exploring performer-audience connection. So right now, I'm talking to the 30 of you, and so I sometimes will look at you, and sometimes look at you, and sometimes you, and sometimes you. But I'm sort of performing sometimes as an actor, we perform to the audience in general. With these performances for an audience of one, it's taking this in general and making it specifically for you. So one audience member encounters the performance. And so in 2011, we started doing these series of performances. We've done 10 works. This one was at the National Museum in Taichung. Next, please. And here, so again, it's exciting to hear each artist has a different approach. So when Whitten was talking about starting with an idea, and so these are the ideas that they're exploring in their work. For us, oftentimes we start with a space. So here I designed this set without knowing the content. So the space starts first, and then you fill it. And so here you see a corridor where the audience would enter into. It's kind of, there's a room here, and then up there you see a bed. The bed was initially in this room. The audience would lie on the bed, and then the bed would be pulled out of the space. This room would push over, and then the audience would be pushed back into a different room. And so it's taking the sense of like, I go to sleep, I pull out, and then when I come back, I'm in a different space. And when they were outside of the space, there was actually like in a wooden structure, so they could hear the sound of footsteps above them, and they could hear the sounds of whisperings above. So they could hear whispering above them. So it's like they were underground, right? And so taking this idea of where am I, and how do we help the audience get lost? And so much of our life is we have our iPhones and we have Google Map, so we don't get lost. We know like, okay, where am I going? How do I get there as quickly as possible? But as artists, I think it's an opposite intention. It's like, how do we lose ourselves? How do we lose the logic and the everyday way we approach living so something different can happen? All of our life is intended to make it make sense. How do we help it stop making sense so we can step out of our life and then come back and look at it differently? Next, please. So this is the image, and you can see the person sort of pulled out over here. Their head would actually be on the other side, but this is a structure above them. And so when they pull out, they're suddenly in this entirely dark space, and hearing the voices above them and the footsteps above them and in this different environment. And so I'll quickly show through these images. So this is at the museum. The audience would just see a red door, so just in a wall. And they had no idea of what existed beyond that wall. Next, please. And so the audience opening the door. Next. There were two paintings. The painting on the right would open, and so the audience could enter the world behind the painting. They would walk down a hallway. There was a corridor where they're peeping through a hole to look into a world. The audience would eventually sit down on beside the bed with a performer. There's an engagement. There's no dialogue, so there's no spoken word. It was all images. Next, please. They'd be seated in a small little cubicle. Next. The drawer would push out. There'd be these masks and this tube. The audience also had a tube they could invited to put in their mouth. Not many people did. Next, please. The audience then would be guided to the bed, lie down, and then this is where the moment where the bed would pull out of the room, and when they would push back, they would be in this different space. Can we go back to the image before? Yeah, so they're in this room, so there's this dark room, and then next, please. And it's almost like this childhood room. Next, please. They'd be covered with this blanket. Next. And this final image of the performance. The whole experience lasted 10 minutes. The last day we performed for 10 people. Of the 10 people, 7 people came out and they were crying. And their tears were not for Romeo or for Juliet. The tears were not for a fictional character. The tears were somehow for themselves. That through this process of seeing these images, something happened. And it's not me telling the story of this other issue or this other event. It's to create this idea of creating a mirror. So when the audience is seeing or experiencing the work, it's not about, oh, look at our work. It's about through our work, they can see themselves. So creating artwork as a vehicle to help the audience see themselves. Next, please. And so these are just some images from different performances. A lot of it is like a lot with eye contact with the performer looking at the audience. And so again, so often in life, we don't make eye contact. If you're on a subway and someone's sitting next to you, you avert your eyes. But it's saying don't avert your eyes. See, be seen, have this moment of connection. Next, please. Next, please. And so these are from the different productions. Next, please. This is in an alley in southern Taiwan in Tainan. And so we did a performance moving through the alleys of the city where the audience would be sort of a mobile performance. So hearing the soundscape. Next, please. In this piece, it was interesting when Christopher Culler was talking about sort of this moment where the audience had this sensation of finally, my parents said, I loved you. In our performances also, we don't have an actual line, but we have someone that we're seeing. You know, that often in life we go by and it's like people don't notice. People don't see us. And in this moment, there is a small scene with like a birthday party where they sort of gather around 5 performers and suddenly you're the center of this universe. You exist. You're present. So the unique characteristics of these performing for an audience of 1 is 1, you can immerse the audience in the artwork. 2, it's a total sensory experience. You can work with touch, smell, taste, sound, sight. We're creating an encounter. And so it's a nonlinear narrative. It's a series of actions. So this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. And so it's not to tell us a story, but it's a series of events, like life. Because I think in life, when we talk about realism, that it represents reality, but life doesn't have a story. It's something happens, and then something else happens, and then we continue. And so our performances are creating this, it's a nonlinear narrative, but it's a series of occurrences. And then also fourth, with these performances for 1, there's this direct engagement with the audience, this blurring of the boundary between seeing and being seen. The main challenges are, next please, you can't see this, so it says financially unsustainable. The next challenge, next please, financially unsustainable. And the next challenge, financially unsustainable. Okay, so you get the picture. So very expensive to perform for 1 person. And so we made the transition to virtual reality. I'm going to finish up in 3 minutes, so I'm going to keep within my 20. Next slide, please. And so for our first piece, well, actually, I'm going to stop here. Okay, so this is the space where we filmed All That Remains, the first scene. This is us sort of going through, it's a 360 VR experience. So if you're unfamiliar, so we have one camera. Before, the audience would move through the world. Now we have the cameras here, and everything is moving in relationship to you. So you're not moving through it, it's happening to you. Next, please. And so here we're trying to map out the relationship. So if the camera is stationary, these people move in relationship to you. You're now in the middle of the image. So I'm not watching it there, I'm now inside of it, and these people are around me. Next, please. And then a performer approaches. Next, please. Again, so now this performer is directly in front of, if you're the camera, but also there's 8 lenses, so you're now around you as well. Next, please. The person's performer, their clothing gets pulled off. Next, please. And then here we had these 2 rooms that we built, and so these 2 rooms start to push in towards the camera. Next, please. And so they push in, so this is, again, this is you here, the camera. Next, please. Until you're enclosed in this different space. And so initially you're in this huge warehouse, and suddenly the space, it sucks in and you're inside this other world. And so a lot of our performance is how does the space breathe, expand and contract in relationship to you, and put you inside. Next, please. So here are images from the production. So these are the 2 people. We saw the SketchUp image. Next, please. The performer approaching, her eyes are averted here as she approaches. So with, again, a lot of these details, if you watch the piece, like pay attention. So when she approaches the camera, her eyes are down, which sort of enables us as the audience to see her. So she's walking, 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 and then she arrives and she lifts her head and she sees you. And so it's the detail of when are you seeing her and when does she have the agency to see back. Next, please. And so here, this direct connection with the camera. This direct connection with you. And so through our work, if you have a chance, we're up on the 2nd floor. It's called All That Remains. It premiered at Venice. It won the Best Immersive Award at the Luxembourg Film Festival. We shot our 2nd piece, Over the Rainbow, that premiered at Tribeca last month, and hopefully we'll be at Venice. So if you're going to Venice this September, please stop by. And we're creating this trilogy, and so we're hopefully going to shoot the 3rd work this year. And again, everything I said, there was no story, there was no message. The message is the experience. To let go of your mind, of reason, of logic, and let something happen. Embrace the unknown. Okay, so if you have a chance, please go see, and thank you for all the panelists, and thank you, and hopefully we'll see you upstairs. Thank you.
We heard all the stories about the work, and I want to thank you guys, everyone. Does anyone have any question for the artist or work?
Hi, my name is Andrea. I'm just curious how to watch the live performances.
Find Willie's booking page is not open yet. The performance will be on this Thursday, Friday, Saturday. 1 shows each day for just 3 seats. But it'll be announced soon, and you can book by online, I guess. Is it right?
Yes. And then for the Ferryman shows, we do ticketed runs of Welcome to Respite and Gumball Dreams a few times throughout the year. So if you go to our social media on Instagram, that's Ferryman VR, and follow us. We always announce our ticketed runs, or go to our webpage, ferrymancollective.com, and sign up for our mailing list, and we'll announce our show runs through that.
그 VR 퍼포먼스에 관련해서 질문을 좀 드리고 싶은 게 있는데요. 우선 대극장 스케일의 대면 공연을 기준으로는 손익 분기점을 넘기기 위해서 예를 들어서 1600석의 객석을 과반수 이상을 채우고 한 달 이상 정도를 지속을 해야 이게 공연이 어느 정도 수익이 나는 걸로 알고 있어요. VR 퍼포먼스의 경우에는 어떤 기준을 통해서 수익을 낼 수 있을지에 대한 구조에 대해서 혹시 좀 알려줄 수 있는지 좀 물어보고 싶고요. 그리고 공연 안에서도 굉장히 높은 스케일 같은 걸 구사하려면은 이게 실제로 수백만 달러의 제작비가 들어가는 이 진짜 세트장이 아니어도 그만큼의 많은 여러 가지 용량과 스케일이 일단 필요하잖아요. 또 그런 환경에서는 또 어느 정도의 관객들을 수용할 수 있을지, 지금까지 알고 있는 그런 VR 특히나 이머시브 공연의 경우에는 VR 챗에서 지금까지 이루어져 왔었는데 혹시 뭔가 지금 아직까지는 좀 대중적으로 알려지지 않은 VR 공연만을 위한 플랫폼이 혹시 개발되고 있는지에 대해서도 좀 물어보고 싶습니다.
When we find the answer to that, we'll let you know. But the good thing about VR chat, for instance, is I created the entire Gumball Dreams for probably $75. That doesn't include the man hours that our team works many hours, and we pay for things like festival submissions. Is probably the biggest budget that I'm aware of. I'm not an expert on the marketing situation, but as far as the creation of the digital world is compared to the creation of a theater space is hugely cheaper.
Yes, so the answer is on some level, at least in America, because we have very little government funding, it's quite difficult to break even doing this. That's not to say that you can't, and I mean, we sell tickets to all of our shows, so at least we pay our actors for every show that they do. And I believe at the moment we actually do have money in the bank, as it were, which is nice. We've won several prizes, we've gotten a few grants, and so that helps. I think the ultimate goal, though, once the world is built, let's say you've paid off everyone who helped build it and you've paid yourself for producing it and all those things, let's say you've done that. At that point, breaking even becomes totally feasible, because then you base your ticket prices on how much it would cost to pay your actors for that show and then any stage managers that you have. So let's see, for Gumball Dreams, I think the 3 audience members, the ticket price is $45 per person, and we pay our actors $40 per show. And then for Welcome to Respite, because it's just one main audience member and up to 9 invisible audience members, I believe the main ticket is $60 and invisible avatars are $25. I think they're about $25. So because those are very non-participatory. So we do a lot of work sort of saying like, well, how much, can we charge for this, and then how much do we need to pay our performers? With Gumball Dreams, what's nice is it's just one performer, so we only have to pay one actor per hour. But I guess the cool thing is that if you had enough actors, this is also the problem at the moment, is there's just not enough actors who are familiar with VR at the moment. But if you had enough, you could theoretically have as many instances of the show as you wanted happening at the same time, right? So I could have 10 lobbies of the show, each with 3 audience members, paying $45 a ticket. And then suddenly it becomes scalable. The feedback, the monetary feedback, is immediate. So theoretically, it's possible. You just have to get to that point where everything else is paid off first. And then, are there platforms being developed? Yes, is the easy answer. Do I know more about them? No. But there are platforms from a lot of people being experimented with performance, live performance in mind.
And so we didn't mention where we're working now with the Center Phi in Montreal to develop performance, which will have live performance with VR for 12 audience members. And so I was really excited to hear TYPEMAN, or the piece will now have 20 audience members. So how do you deal with scalability? The Center Phi did a piece called The Infinite, which is dealing with space travel. And so I think that they could have 100 people sort of pass through in 1 hour. And so it's, again, thinking about, and so there's not a live performance, but it's sort of creating this experience where you're moving through the physical world. And so I think that there's looking for different models to accomplish this. And I think also at this early stage, a lot of artists and producers, it's not about the profitability, but it's about creating these encounters, bringing people into the world where once they experience it, then other companies are willing to invest. And so it's sort of an early stage where it's, I'd say now, not about profit. It's about maybe breaking even or even losing a little. So our performances for an audience of 1 might not make a profit, but to be able to share that experience with your audience is important. So we make other projects which are more commercial, and we make other projects which are really sort of driven by, the artistic impulse to create a moment of community. And so I think that it's finding a balance between these. And so I understand as a business, to be profitable is an objective. But also as an artist, that's not the main thing that's driving your work, right?
네, 한국 감독님께 질문 드리고 싶은데요. 그 파인드 윌리가 다른 VR들처럼 라이브로 배우분이 하시는 건지 아니면 미리 녹화 같이 되어 있는 건지.
이번에요?
네, 파인드 윌리 이쪽에 상영할 때.
이번에 상영할 때 이제 실제로 공연을 해요. 배우분들이 라이브로 진행을 하게 되고요. 관객 3분이 실시간으로 참여를 하시면서 볼 수 있는 그런 공연입니다.
그럼 VR 필름은 무조건 배우들이 라이브로 인터랙티브를 해야 VR 필름이라고 할 수 있는 건지.
그런 거는 아니지만 이제 VR 필름 중에도 이제 여기 전시된 작품들을 보시면은 라이브 액터가 필요 없는 작품들도 있는데 저희 작품 같은 경우에는 스토리가 변화하는 부분도 있고 관객들이 참여하는 정도나 아니면 배우들이 이제 진행하는 방식에 따라서 조금씩 디테일들이 계속 바뀌게 돼요. 결말도 2가지 결말이 있고 그러다 보니 이제 라이브로 진행을 하고 있습니다.
혹시 VR 게임과 VR 필름의 차이점이 있다면 뭐라고 생각하시는지 아니면 그 사이에 경계가 따로 없다고 생각하시는지.
어떤 로직이나 혹은 내러티브가 있는지에 따라서 그 구분을 명확히 할 수도 있고 구분이 없다고 할 수도 있을 텐데요. 아까 이제 처음에 위튼이 얘기했던 그 텐더 클로즈라는 팀에서 만든 그 언더프레젠트라는 이제 앱을 만들었는데 그 텐더 클로즈는 그걸 이제 처음에는 게임으로 오픈을 했어요. 내러티브 기반의 게임이고 혼자서 이제 스토리를 체험하면서 진행을 할 수 있는데 나중에 그 가상 공간 안에 또 다른 에피소드의 어떤 무대를 만들어서 템페스트라는 공연을 진행을 했었거든요. 그래서 게임으로 작동을 하는 어떤 앱이 이런 식으로 공연의 무대가 될 수 있기도 하고 마찬가지로 이제 VR 연극이지만 이제 그 안에 게임적인 요소를 저희도 녹여낸 부분이 있거든요. 그래서 연출하기 나름이나 아니면은 그 이야기에 적합한 방식으로 적용이 되기도 하고 철저하게 이제 내러티브 기반으로만 가는 콘텐츠들도 있다 보니까 그 차이는 이제 여기에 전시되어 있는 좋은 작품들을 좀 몇 개 살펴보시면서 좀 더 직접 느껴보실 수 있으면 좋겠습니다.
Okay, let's wrap it up and thank you all. Yeah, let's give them a big round of applause for them.